Learn C# in 15 minutes. And we'll start off with the classic hello world. So we call console.writeLine and then we print hello world. To run the application, we just press this play button, it opens the terminal window and prints hello world. Now we're using Visual Studio for this, and I'll show you later in the video how to install it. We'll now move on to variables and types. Now to set a variable in C#, you set the type, give the variable a name, and then set the value. Now I believe this is similar to Java. Not that I've ever used Java, but if you come from that background, this should be familiar. Now you must remember to set the type of the variable, otherwise you get an error like this. That's how you do it for a Boolean. For a string, you do it using double quotes. For a character, you use a single quote with a single character. Now there's a couple of different numeric types. For a whole number, you can use an integer, and for decimal places, you can use float, double, or decimal. The only real difference is the precision in each of these. I don't really use floats myself, but if you are going to use that, you need to append an F to the number. For decimal, you need to append the M. If you don't do that to a number, it will think it's a double and will throw an error. But you don't have to declare the type. You can use var, and the C# compiler will try and work out what type it is. So you replace the types with var, and the compiler will try and work out what the type is for the variable based on the value. So for example, with this variable, we've got a decimal number with F appended to it. So it assumes it's a float. Now in all the companies that I've worked for, this is the way that we've done it. The managers have been fine actually setting var rather than declaring the actual type. So in my opinion, this is the acceptable way of declaring variables. Vars are designed to be reassignable, but constants ain't. To set a constant, you use the const keyword and you must set the type for it before declaring the name and the value. If you attempt to change the value after it's been declared, you get an error. Now I like to use constants across the site when I need to share a value that's never going to change. These are the different math operators. You use the plus symbol for addition, the dash sign for subtraction, star for multiplication, and / for division. Now if you want to output a variable along with other types, you use the plus symbol and then add the variable name. But there's a much better way of doing it, and that's using string interpolation. How you use that is you prepend the $sign and then you can wrap the variable type around curly braces. In my opinion, this makes it a lot more readable, and this is the way I tend to do this. You may wish to cast your variable to a different type. We've set a double here, but we want to cast it to an integer. So all you do is you use the rounded braces and then set the type for it. So when we output this, because it's an integer, it will remove the decimal places and it will output 9. You can also convert your variable to a different type. So here we set a variable of 41, but because it's got quotes, it's going to be seen as a string. What we're doing here is we're passing it as an integer. So when we output it, it will be the same value, but now it will be a numeric type of integer. But when you're doing this, just make sure that it's in the right format. So here, this is actually a string, but we're trying to pass it to an integer. And when we do that, we get this exception saying the input string not sure was not in the correct format. I've caused a number of problems using int parse with the wrong format, so something to watch out for. Now to use C#, you can use Visual Studio, and here's how you install it. Doing a search for Visual Studio comes up with this page. Now you've either got the Community Edition or the Professional Edition. If you're a single developer, you can just download the free Community Edition. The Professional is used for companies who have to pay for the software. Once installed, open it up and create a new project. Select C#, Windows and Console, select Console App, go through, set the project name, solution name, and the framework you want to use, then create the application. At that point, you can use C# and use the play button to open a terminal window and test your changes. Practicing C# will improve your knowledge and give you a much higher chance of getting a job as a .NET and C# developer. Now we're going to be doing many more videos on C#, particularly when new features are released, So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new videos. Let's now move on to conditionals. This is how you write an if-else statement in C#. Now if you've got multiple lines in the block, you must use the curly braces, but it's optional if you've only got one line. But I personally prefer to use them as I think it makes it more readable. So when we output this, my age equals 41, it's going to output this line to the console application. You've also got else if for multiple conditions. So if this is not true, it will go on to the next one. If that's not true, it will then go on to the final one. Now I used to get into a lot of trouble doing it this way, particularly if I had multiple else if statements. It would get too big and the developers weren't happy and couldn't read my code, but there is a much better way of doing this. You can use a switch statement. So you put the variable in as the switch statement and then you put each of the cases with the conditions and then default for the else statement. But there's an even better way of doing that, and that's using a switch expression. So here you set the variable, you got the variable with the switch, you got all the conditions in there, and what's that, 4 or 5 lines of code? So you've really simplified how to do that. If you want to group 2 or more conditions together into a single if statement, you can use the and also, represented by ampersands, or 2 pipes that represents or else. So here we're saying if my age is over 40 and it's male, output this to the console application. For this one we're saying if my age equals 40 or it's a male, so if either of these are true, it will output it to the console. Now here we're saying if my age is not 40 and it's not a male. So the exclamation mark represents that it's not. So we're saying is not male and not age 40. If both of these are true, it will output it to the console. You can write an if-else statement with one line of code using the ternary conditional operator. So here's how it works. You put your condition. If it's true, you separate it with a question mark and put your true statement. If it's false, you add a colon and put your false statement. This is my preferred approach because I think it makes it much more readable. You can have multiple ternary conditional operators in one statement, but I'd strongly advise against it. If you have too many, it gets confusing very quickly. Now if you want to try anything out in this tutorial, you can download the code linked in the description. Let's now look at arrays. There's a number of different ways of declaring variables. You can either declare it with the values, so this will give it a size of 4, or you can declare an empty array with an initial size. So this is giving it a size of 5. Then you set the values like this, and it starts off, so the first entry in it is 0, and it goes 1 and 2, and so on. The problem with arrays though, is that they're difficult to resize, and if we go outside the bounds, we're going to get an exception. So here we're trying to set one with an index of 10, but we've only set it with a size of 5. So this is going to throw an index out of range exception. Now we're using a try-catch block, so we're catching the exception and outputting a more friendly message. So when we run this, we now get something went wrong, index was outside the bounds of the array. There's also support for multi-dimensional arrays. This is where you can have 2 or more index numbers. So it's done in a similar way, so you can either set it as an empty array with the sizes and then set the values underneath that, or you can declare the values as you're declaring the array. But I think there's a much better way of doing this, and that's using lists. And this is how you declare a list. So you have to give it a type, then you can add your entries by calling add. But there's a much simpler way of doing this. So when you declare it, you can just set the values in like that. Now if you wish to remove an entry from the list, you just call remove like that. And you can also get a count of all the entries in there just by calling count. Now we're not going to be touching on link operators in this video, but I'm going to be releasing a video in about a month's time after this has been released, so make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're now going to have a look at loops, and here's an example of a for loop. So what we're doing here is we're setting a variable of a, setting it to 1, and then we're looping through it by incrementing it by 1 every time, up until the fact that it's less than or equal to 9. Now if it's an odd number, we call continue. If a equals 1, it'll be an odd number. In that instance, it will go to the next iteration, so a will be 2, and then it will rerun all of this again. Now, if this becomes true, then we break out the for loop. What that means is that it won't run anything else in this for loop, and it will come out of it. If you've got a list or an array, what you can do is you can use for each. So here, we're looping through this array here. We're declaring it in this variable and outputting it to the console application. You've also got while loops as well. So here we're declaring a variable of x, and we're saying if x is less than or equal to 10, output it to the console and then increment it by 1. But just be careful with while loops. This is something I've done many times in the past. If you forget to add this, you'll get into an infinite loop and it will never come out of the while loop. You've also got the do while loop as well, and the only difference between that is that this is guaranteed to run at least once. Practicing C# is good to start with, but as you progress, you're really going to have to apply your knowledge to a real-world application, and you can do that with my Minimal API course linked in the description, where we build a web API from start to finish using entity framework and unit testing. Now let's have a look at classes. When declaring a class, it's advisable to set the namespace so you can group similar objects together. Now inside a class, you can set properties, and this allows you to set values within your class. Now with constructors, you can overload them. If you're not passing in any parameters, you don't actually need this. But if you want to add parameters when initializing your class, you can overload the constructor like this, and in this example, we're passing in these parameters and setting the properties based on the values in the parameters. To add a method, we do it like this, and then we return this string. So this is getting the name property, so whenever we initialize a class and call this method, it will return this value. And this is how you initiate the class. So you need to import the namespace that you gave to your class. So we gave it roundthecode.c# basics, so we need to import that. Now to initialize the class, we can use the curly braces to declare the properties. So the properties will store the data, and we can use the methods to action against them. So here, we're calling person.greet, and we're outputting the value in the console. So it's outputting, hi, I'm David. Now we overloaded the constructor earlier, passing in the parameters like this. The problem with this method though, is if we were to add a new parameter to this, any instance of the person class being initiated would need to be updated. This is why I prefer this approach of setting properties. So far we've marked everything as public, whether it be the property, the method, or the class. This means it can be used anywhere in the code, but you may wish to change that protection. So here we've set a private field, and this means that this can only be used within the employee class. You've also got internal as well, and this can be used anywhere in the same assembly. There's also protected, where you can use it within an inherited class, and we'll come on to that later on in the video. Some of your properties might be null. To add that, you append the question mark to the type when declaring it. Now if you wish to check whether a property is not null, you can do it like this, or you can remove the not sign if you're checking whether it is null. Now you can also use the null conditional operator to output a value that might be null. In fact, I recommend that you doing this, because if this is null and you try to run this, it's going to throw an exception. We're now going to have a look at structs, and these are very similar to classes. The main difference is that struct is a value type, whereas class is a reference type. When assigning these values around, they get copied, whereas with a class, they get shared. So use structs for sort of smallish data like coordinates, where copying is cheap and expected. I personally don't use structs, I prefer classes. We're now moving on to interfaces. This is where it declares a contract. It sets the methods or properties that a class must use that's implementing it without actually adding the implementation. And this is the class that's implementing it. Now we've marked this as abstract, meaning we can't initiate it directly. If we try to do that, we get this exception. Now we've implemented the turn on method, but we've also marked that as abstract. That means that we need to implement that method in another class. And we've created this class to do it. It inherits that remote control class that we just showed you. We override that abstract method and we set isOn to true. Now if we go into remote control, that property is marked as protected, so it can be set within this class because it inherits remote control. But if we tried to do that in program, it wouldn't work. Enums give you a set of constant values, which is a much better way than just setting numbers. Now it starts off with the index of 0, 1 and 2, but you can override that by declaring what number you want for it. Now to use it in your code, you just get the enum and then you call whichever constant you want to output. Moving on to static classes, and the members inside them actually belong to the class rather than the instance. You can't declare an instance of a static class. If you do, you get this exception saying cannot create an instance of the static class mathhelper. All you do is you get the class type, then call the method in this instance and then pass in the parameter. I find that static classes are good for methods that are reused throughout the application. Now if you want to continue learning about C#, then watch this video next. I'll see you over there.